Door Guys. This is Davis.
And Vinny.
It's Andres.
And Sean.
Oh, you didn't have a fake name this time?
Nah, I couldn't think of one today.
And the guy in the middle over there is Cincinnati Reds superfan, Josh Sneed.
Yes, indeed.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome,
Such
Josh.
a pleasure to be here, boys.
We're very glad to have you. We've been looking forward to it. You know, I said it last week. We looked at the calendar and all these people come. We're like, oh God, we got to get him. We got to get him. We got to get him. We saw you and I was like, oh, Josh should do it for sure. And then you posted on Facebook. You asked, hey, do I get to do it when we're out there? And I was like, well, fuck yeah! You just made it even easier because there's always that awkwardness of asking someone. I mean, you know, maybe not someone like you that we've known for a while, but asking someone because you still never know how people are going to respond. And you know, I wish everybody would ask us ahead of time if they could do the fucking podcast.
I will say though, the setup here with all of us, all five of us, and you got there's like a people can't tell, but there's like a good what would you say? This is 10 foot,
10, 15 feet. Yeah.
Gap between us and them. And I feel like we're like appearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, right? Like all three of us are like on trial with these two.
So please tell me, why did you make the decision to go over there?
I've been told not to answer that question.
Well, if anything, for sure, someone's on trial, and the other two are the lawyers, so.
Yeah, that looks about right.
Yeah.
You're definitely not a
In
lawyer.
fairness, there's probably a lot of stories where I would plead the fifth on anyway.
Yeah, but you're the lawyer. He's the defendant.
Oh, Andres, definitely.
So how did this get started? I'm gonna start with the question.
Yeah, go for
How
it.
did this get started with you guys?
Well, during the pandemic, we were just talking about your love of video games, too. It was through, we played Call of Duty together. Vinny and Sean didn't, but a lot of the other door guys did. We played the Call of Duty Warzone.
Yeah.
And just being bored doing that, one of the other door guys, the Scott who was doing sound tonight, he won all this equipment, just signed up for a contest, won it, and then one day was like, hey, we should start a podcast. And so me and him kind of threw the idea around and just started doing it kind of right before we opened back up from the pandemic. And we were like, we were bored and wanted to keep comedy kind of going, and we're not stand-ups, and so we just kind of started doing that shit.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
But you may not be stand-ups, but I would consider you guys experts. I mean, I can tell you that, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I would guess a lot of other comics, that compliments from the sound guys, the door guys, the wait staff mean more than a compliment from any audience member, because you guys see all of it. So it's way more flattering to hear stuff from you guys, because you're all jaded at this point.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I mean, seriously. So I'm thrilled that you would want to have me on. Thank you.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of it, and a lot of it we don't care to see again. But
What? There's no podcast. No.
But with you, you're one of those people that whenever I would work, I would make sure I'm in here every show that I'm working.
Oh man,
I mean, just so because I was like, I know I've heard this before. I've heard this
for sure you have
years, but I want to hear it again.
Oh man,
you're one of the ones that I
could
could listen to it every time. I mean, there's some guys where I've heard the first bit and I'll drift out and I'll drift in and I'll go talk with Davis or we'll go do something else. But you're definitely one of the few people that's on that list of, I don't care what's going on. I'll sit in the back of the showroom and watch the entire show.
Thank you,
and
man.
then come back out. So.
Oh, that's sweet. Here's a hug from 15 feet away.
During when we first, because we started this at my house, and after a while, Colleen said we could do it up here in the showroom, and because of the pandemic and everything, I have like 100-foot cord. I would sit in the back behind everybody who would sit up here.
It's like a socially distanced podcast. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like everybody was down here in a little group, and then Davis was way back there.
So we actually recommend people listening sit 6 feet away from their speaker just to be extra safe.
You never know what's going to come through.
That's right.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
And then then once we started opening back up, because you guys had staff on, and I know I was on, and
the first couple were just us, and then we had you talk about Medicine Hat, and then a couple staff, and then
You had me on too.
Did we?
Sean was on.
Yeah, we did.
And then once we started having and we did a bunch of local comics, like we had an episode with Austin recently, and Nick Allen and Richard and a bunch of other local comics, and then we were able to get a few guys that were coming through.
That's awesome.
So it's been a good little mix.
The Nick Allen episode was one of my proudest moments.
Your personal proudest moment?
Oh, definitely.
Is that when you browned out?
Yes.
That was the famous or infamous just skip me moment. He's halfway through his thing and he's like, just skip me.
At least you knew, right?
Or did I?
You bring up Medicine Hat. Medicine Hat is the reason that I work at the Omaha Funny Bone.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
He was
crazy.
the first person to bring me to the old club as his opener, and that's how I got in.
Wow.
No
Yeah.
shit.
That's crazy because when we had Pete Lee on and he told the story about getting in his first time with Medicine Hat and I didn't know that he had ties to him and I had no idea that you had ties to him either.
Yeah.
How did you get hooked up with him?
I worked with him in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh,
And
okay.
then
Yeah.
he said, you ever been to Omaha? I mean, because he went to a lot of clubs multiple times a year, but he was here like 11 times a year back in the day.
You say he comes every 6 weeks, just like the Visa bill.
That's hilarious. And so he brought me to the old club, and still to this day, one of the shows with him at the old club was the craziest thing I've ever seen in a comedy club.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened? Because I know we saw some pretty crazy stuff here, but at the old club, it was even crazier.
Oh my gosh. So this is a filthy story, but
That's what we love.
I'll never forget it. It was the day that I believed in hypnosis. Because there was always part of you that was just like, how real is this, and then at some point, I think all of us that worked with him or any hypnotist, or comedy club employees that worked hypnotist shows, at some point you're like, all right, this is real. This has never happened before. And it wouldn't.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So he used to do this thing where if he had like a really hot girl on stage, he would, really make her a focal point of the show. And then he would tell like her date, look, you've been a good sport letting me, do all these jokes with her. And I'm gonna take care of you. You want me to take care of you? And of course the guy would always be like, yeah. So there was this girl. Oh my God. So she's up on stage by herself. She's the last one up there. Everybody else has been sent back to the audience. And he says, for the next 3 days, if anyone touches your forehead with their thumb, you will experience the most mind-blowing orgasm that you've ever had. And everybody's like, what? No, come on. He's like, I'm going to show you. And he's like, you're going to be able to do this at home, but I'm going to show you. So he sits down next to her and he puts his thumb on her forehead and she just starts squirming. And then she starts moaning. And then she starts screaming. And then her light-colored jeans completely flood, and everyone in the audience can see it.
Okay.
And guys are standing up like, no. And I'm in the back, like I'm like 25, I'm in the back, like this is one of my first weeks ever on the road. I'm like, this is the greatest job ever. Like I couldn't, it was the craziest thing to this day I've still ever seen in a comedy club, and I'll never forget. It was what she was wearing, just the lighting, like everyone saw it, and it was insane.
Yeah, he's told that story on stage before.
Oh yeah, and chicks pissing their pants during a show was pretty commonplace.
Yeah,
I seen that multiple times.
Yeah, because you were right up against the stage,
Yeah,
so you would have seen it.
Yeah, and I remember one time there was this just homely, ugly girl on stage, and he got her to pee her pants, and then they were doing something, and she comes up and says, my dad hates it when I snowball him.
What?
Oh yeah, that was the spelling bee bit.
Yeah.
That was the spelling bee bit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. She
'Cause
probably
she spelled snowball. Yeah. And this word.
Do you remember that?
I remember that episode.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
And now I know the homely girl you were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's how she used it in a sentence?
Yeah. Because it was to spell a word, and then she spelled snowball, and Hat's like, all right. And then she's like, use it in a sentence. And she said, my dad hates it when I snowball him.
My God. That's incredible and terrible. So what did he do for her? What did he convince her not to?
I think it wasn't anything sexual.
When you wake up, you will think you are a successful person.
She was up there the whole time with the wet crotch. I mean,
I don't recall seeing the wet crotch, but that's because I was back in the sound booth.
it was wet. It was, she peed a little bit.
Were you up at the stage for that one? Watching?
Yeah, like when I first started here, that's all I did. I was sitting right next to the stage, and I was the guy making sure people didn't fall off.
Because that happened too. I remember.
Oh,
that
yeah.
happened here.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was like a big thing here that some lady fell on a table. Or some lady or some guy, right?
Medicine
Got
Hat.
hurt.
I think there was a couple different ones. I don't
There's
think.
a different hypnotist that happened for.
Oh, really?
Yeah. As after Hat died, there was a dude that jumped off the stage and messed up his
broke
knee.
his
Oh,
ankle,
yeah,
so
that's
yeah.
it. Yeah. So there was another hypnotist out of Toronto. I'm trying to remember what his name was, but he was at my home club, Go Bananas, and he was having a great show, and for whatever reason, the audience kind of started to turn on him, saying that it was fake. And he says, he goes, I don't ever do this, but I'm just to prove to you, because he's like, this show's going so well. He's like, just to prove to you guys this is real, I'm going to do this. So there was a girl on stage who was, she was probably like early 20s at the most, rail thin. And he says, all right, he stands her up, and he like whispers something in her ear, and he like kind of shakes her head just a little bit to the side, and she like firmed up. And then he puts his hands on her shoulders, and he kind of does the same thing, and then like you just see like her arms like firm up. And then he does the same thing all the way down her body. And then he has someone come up, and he lays her head on a chair, like literally just her head, the back of her head, and then the bottom of her feet on a chair, and everything in between is just suspended. And she's like this flat board across two chairs with just her feet and head, nothing else on the chair.
chairs.
And then he took his shoes off, and he stood on her stomach, and she did not even buckle.
What the?
It was
fuck?
crazy.
That is crazy.
And like the place, of course, lost their minds.
Oh yeah, how could you not?
Yeah, they could never do something like that today with the way people get sued and all that stuff. But he stood on this like 100-pound girl's stomach with just her head and feet under a chair, and everything else was suspended, and she did not even flick. It was crazy.
Wow.
Speaking of people getting sued, we did have a third hypnotist that was here, not the one that the guy broke his leg, but a different one. And he tried to do this kind of bit with her stiff as a board, but he would bring us. So for people at home, when we do a hypnotist show, a couple door guys are at the front to make sure people don't fall off the stage. He would bring us up there to hold the person instead of chairs. We were supposed to hold whatever person he chose, so they could be big, small, whatever, to do this stiff as a board thing. And one of the door guys would be on one side, one the other, to have her do that. And it was so like a liability, because I don't know who I can fucking pick up,
Yeah.
And so it was very nerve-wracking for us.
I'm sure.
Because we
You don't want to be implicated.
What was this, a local
Yes.
guy? Okay.
Yeah, you know who it was.
Yep.
And didn't he do it one time when there was like just huge dude, like
Yeah,
like a
yes,
6'3", like gigantic.
One was a
dude.
really big lady, and one was a really big dude.
Yeah,
and
and
I was like, dude, I'm struggling holding this person up. Like, I'm gonna drop
I was
them.
like, I'm glad I'm in the back and I don't have to do this shit.
Oh my God.
Well, and he just wasn't very aware, and he'd turn his back on him a lot while he was doing while like they were actually doing stuff on stage. He would turn his back, to keep them going deeper, or however it works. And so he wasn't paying attention to them, and they're doing all kinds of crazy shit. And
Does that guy do open mics now?
I recently asked Colleen about him. She says she has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
How do you practice hypnotism in like a 5-minute quick set? Oh my gosh. I was in Shreveport one time with a hypnotist, and it was a 3-show Saturday, and on the third show, he tried to get this group of audience members to do something, but he had forgotten he hadn't put them under yet. And he just starts getting mad that they won't do anything. And somebody's like, you didn't hypnotize them yet. And because like that happens to comics that on those 3-show nights, like you forget, like you've already done the joke twice.
Sure.
And
Right.
you're like, have I already done that this set? And you find yourself repeating stuff or leaving stuff out because you feel like you already said it. But it was funny. He forgot to hypnotize him. And then he was pissed that they weren't doing it.
We did have a guy here. I wasn't working this show, and I think one of the kitchen guys got pulled out to be a door guy up front. I think it was Ty Ingram. And a guy from the crowd got mad that so this guy, and I think it was a bit stolen from Medicine Hat, where he would make in the early part when they're hypnotized, the guys would have a female genitalia and dudes would have.
Oh, right.
And so this guy came out of the crowd to go up on stage, which all hypnotists, I feel like, tell people don't come up here and grab them off stage because they're hypnotized still.
Yeah. They can hurt
This
themselves.
guy went up there because he was pissed that his lady was jerking her dick off that she didn't have.
Her imaginary dick.
And he was real fucking mad to where we had to like get him out there. And I think we finally got the girl off stage, not hypnotized anymore. And I mean, the door guys were telling him out there, she really doesn't have a dick. You guys are disgusting. I can't believe you do this here. And we're like, I don't know how to explain this to you, man, but it's all entertainment.
Ricky Kalman used to do a bit that always made me laugh when he hypnotized people, where he had like a stack of napkins and he told them they were $100 bills. And if they did something, he'd give them money.
Nice.
That's great.
And then he just had this like giant stack of napkins, and he'd be like, "Here you go," and they'd be like stuffing it. Like, oh my God, I can't believe he gave me money. It's so great. Those shows. I mean, you talk about like not wanting to leave the room.
Oh yeah.
That the hypnotists that do it well. Those are the shows where you don't want to miss a minute because every single one's going to be different.
Oh yeah. And that's what people kept like. Well, he always does the same stuff. I'm like, well, yes, he may do the same bits, but you get different people up there doing different reactions. You never know what you're going to see, and it's never the same show.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was always a crapshoot, as Medicine Hat would say. Sometimes you roll the dice. Sometimes it comes up 7. Sometimes it comes up snake eyes.
It's hilarious.
I did not know that you had quite the background in hypnotist shows.
Oh, I mean, at some point you just work with everything,
Yeah.
Guitars, puppets. I mean, like I've worked with all of them at this point. So let me ask you this, like what comics for you guys are the comics that like you won't leave the room when they're on stage because you're worried you might miss something good?
Ian Bagg is one for
Absolutely.
me.
For sure.
Absolutely. It's a great one.
Yeah, he's definitely a powerhouse for sure. Because you never know what he's going to do.
Yeah, that's never the same show twice. That's a great one. Him and Russ Maneve are kind of in a league of their own of just like the material just goes out the window. It's all about that crowd.
Right. There's a couple that pop in my mind. Augie Smith is one for sure.
Augie's great. Yeah.
And Chris Porter.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say Chris
Those
Porter.
are good.
Just again, same with you. I've heard it, 100 times, but I want to hear it again. And then when you guys come through, it took me a while when I first started. I think it happened with you because you came through and you were doing like your early stuff and you had your early CD out. The shout out to my peeps.
Oh my God, that
then
was
when
a century ago.
And then you came back like after you had that CD out, and then you didn't do like any of those jokes, and I was still relatively new. I was like, where's all the stuff that I heard before? I want to hear that again. And then that took me. I was like, oh no, he's doing new stuff, and then that's the whole point.
That's how I know how long ago it was. Is that I had new material when I came back here. Now it's like a surprise. Like, oh my God, I've actually never heard that one before. What's gotten into Josh lately? He's writing.
He's writing?
I know.
Must have been bored during COVID.
I was very bored during COVID.
Was that the special that Hedberg was on the first part of it?
Yeah. Shout out to my peeps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that the other day that was on there. There's a guy, Jeff Siegel. He's working on a Mitch documentary,
Oh,
And-
really?
and
Oh, really?
I got to watch a little bit of it, and in my conversation with him, leading up to getting to watch the little bit he's got done, we talked about that CD and how that came to be, that he recorded that intro for me on it. And it sucked because I mean I would have used that for the rest of my career on every album, but he passed away, and so I just felt like, especially when they were getting released by like Comedy Central or something, he wasn't around to ask if it was still cool to use it, because at that time it was like, who's gonna hear this?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure he would have, just knowing him and how nice he was. But yeah, the story behind that was, I was working with Mitch about once a month. He would just call and he'd say like, what club are you trying to get into that you just can't get on the phone or you can't get a chance at? And I would just be like, I don't know, like Atlanta or Seattle. I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Eventually. And he would call me back like a half hour later and he's like, all right, we're going to Houston and I'll get you in there.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
I mean, it was insane because he's my favorite comic and he was helping me. And so he had us booked in Nashville. And the week before, I was opening for Ron White on his final club date that he did before he was only doing theaters. And it was in Chattanooga. And it was 2 shows, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 shows Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. He had sold them all out. But he kept the week because he had booked it before he, kind of blew up overnight in a weird way for as long as he'd been doing it.
Right.
And so my manager that managed Ron said, you should record your CD in Chattanooga because you're going to have like really hot crowds for like 9 shows.
You'll have a little bit of material.
Yeah. So he's like, record there. It'll sound the same, but you over the course of the week, you'll have enough. So I set up to record there, and the MC that week was this local guy named Cousin Ricky. and he was super funny, but he had he sounded like you would assume some guy that goes by Cousin Ricky would sound. So I would go back and listen to him, and I was just trying to find one that sounded okay because I was really happy with the sets, but every single set started with, and now, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Josh Sneed. And I was like, dude, I cannot use this. And so the very next week, I was in Nashville with Mitch, and he was asking how it went. And I told him, I was like, it was great, except, I just don't know what I'm going to do about this intro. And he's like, I'll record it for you. I was like, what? He's like, you still got your equipment? I was like, yeah, it's in the car. He's like, I'll record it for you. So I brought my recording equipment into the green room in Nashville, and he's like, I was like, do you what are you gonna say? He's like, I'll think of something. And so that was the first take. He's like, hey everybody, this is Mitch Hedberg. Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and listen to the stylings of my favorite Josh Sneed. And that was the intro for my album. Nice. And it was like, I was on cloud 9, I mean, it was just like, and to still have it and be able to listen to it when I want to, but like, I mean, that was Mitch. So he would even offer to do that.
That's awesome.
The king. He's the best, man. Did you guys ever get to see him live? Any of you?
No, I don't think he was here ever.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
not live, but live on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. He was just like, I don't know. See, the only, it's not even a downside, but like one of the things about working with him is that his like cadence was so like noticeable and addictive that you start talking like him and you start writing like him when you were with him. And so I would write these jokes and I'd be like, Mitch, I wrote a joke for you, and he'd be like, Josh, that's your joke. I can't do that joke. That's your joke. And I'm like, but it doesn't make sense if I do it because it's like a weird pun one-liner,
Yeah.
And he's like, man, that's funny. You need to do it, but I can't do it. It's your joke. And I was like, all right, well, then I guess just nobody will do it. So we were in Atlanta one night, and he goes, he's like halfway through his act. He's like, Josh, are you still in here? And he was one for me. I would never miss a second of him on stage. And I was like, yeah, I'm back here. He's like, y'all remember Josh? Well, he wrote jokes for me, and he won't do them. He thinks I should do them, but they're his jokes. So I'm going to have him come back up here and have him do the jokes that he wrote for me. And he's like, you guys want to hear that? And I was like, what? This is like never happened before.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on back up here, Josh. And so I went up on stage, and I was like, well, I wrote these jokes for Mitch, so if I'm going to do them, I'm going to do them as Mitch. And I like grabbed the microphone, I closed my eyes. I just like looked down, I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, all right.
Getting the character.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember one of them was like, I told my friend I had butterflies in my stomach. He thought I was nervous, but I had actually fallen asleep at a picnic with my mouth open. And the place like lost it. And so I did like 4 of them and then got off stage. And then from that night on, every time we worked together, he'd have me come up and do the jokes that I wrote for him as him.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was like, he was the best. He's everything you would hope Mitch Hedberg would be. And so like especially at that time, like I had never had any way to repay him for like all the cool things he did for me. So one day, if you're familiar with his material, he had all these jokes about koalas. He loved koala bears.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, my apartment has a koala infestation. It's the cutest infestation ever. You know? And so I was at the mall in some city we were in, and I walked past a Build-A-Bear, and they had like all these different animals, and they had a koala, and I was like, oh, this will be fun. So I go into the Build-A-Bear, and they have this thing where you can record your own voice and like put it in their paw so that when you press it, it says something.
Uh-huh.
And so I made a koala bear, and I had it as like the koala was like Mitch doing his jokes. You know? I love this koala bear. He's so cute. You know? And so I gave it to him. I was like, I know this is dumb, but like this is just like my little thank you to you. And him and Lynn loved it, and they named it Quacky. And when they would go on the road, they would use it to like order room service and blame it on Quacky. You know, like, where'd all this food come from? Quacky, you did this? Well, we can't let it go to waste. We better eat it. You know. So if you look at his Mitch Altogether CD from Comedy Central, and the liner notes, it says, Josh Sneed, thank you for Quacky. It's the koala bear that I made for him.
That's
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. Huh. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he's the best.
Speaking of comics that we've lost, did you ever work with Ralphie May?
I didn't.
No.
There's a couple guys that I always wanted to, but I never got to. Ralphie May, John Panette was another one.
Yeah.
Richard Jenny was another one that I was just like either wanted to like meet or somehow work with, and I never got to. But I talked to Ralphie weirdly twice in Tampa on the radio, because like there's a big rate, kind of like a Todd and Tyler. There's a guy there that's like he like owns the city when it comes to morning radio, and that's the show you go on. And him and Ralphie were really tight, and Ralphie would call in a lot of times. Even if he wasn't coming to Tampa, he would just call into the show while I was there.
Right.
And he was like, anytime my name came up, you know, he was just like, oh man, he's so funny. I like that guy a lot, Josh Sneed. And I was just like, it's kind of surreal, you know, but I've always heard just the sweetest things about him.
You know, I was really impressed with Ralphie. I only worked with him once, and the time he was here, you know, there were some comics working with him, and he was just giving so much guidance to the young comics and things like that. It was awesome.
It's important. I mean, I was a sponge, and I came up in such a great time for a lot of the greats to just be in the clubs. You know what I mean? Like I was featuring when like Bill Burr and Gaffigan and Greg Giraldo and, you know, say what you want about him, Louis C.K. and Hedberg and Attell and Patrice O'Neill. And you know what I mean? Like all these like just like legends.
That's a big list of heavy hitters right there.
Yeah. And like, you know, I was very blessed in Cincinnati to kind of have my pick of the litter when it came to shows as an MC or as a local feature, that I would just cherry pick like all these guys that I just like idolized. And and they were all very gracious with their time and answering the same questions that, comics ask me now once in a while. But it was like, like I would hear, Carl LeBove, rest in peace. Like he would tell these stories about Sam Kinison, and I couldn't wrap my head around Sam Kinison ever not being a giant celebrity. Like I couldn't picture him as just like a headliner in a comedy club.
Regular dude. Yeah.
And it's funny because I would hear these stories and I would just be like, what? Like, that's crazy. And then now it's funny because like younger comics are like, what? Like you worked with Mitch Hedberg? You know what I mean? Like now I'm the dude that's like, yeah, he was just a comic, just a dude on the road. I went wherever he asked me to go.
And now everybody, the young guys, know him as the powerhouse.
Yeah, this is one of the goats.
That's who got me into comedy. Like when I was a little kid, I had a Comedy Central blend, like
the premium blend.
Yeah. His set, I'm like, I would always watch it when it was on, and like that kind of got me into like starting to like get into comedy and watching all these different guys.
Yeah, I still had my day job at the time, and when Mitch did the Montreal Comedy Festival, Time Magazine had sent a writer there to do a story on Montreal, and I think it was like the year before Seinfeld had gone off the air. So the premise of this article was like, will I find the next Seinfeld here? And he profiled all of these comedians who were playing at Montreal, and Mitch was the one. He said he's going to be the next Seinfeld. Not that he compared them, but just like he's the next big thing in comedy. And so someone at my day job that knew I was like just starting out in stand-up, they were like, hey, I thought you might like to read this. And I was reading about him, and I read the first joke I ever read of Mitch's was, I like tennis, but the thing that's depressing about tennis is no matter how good I get, I'll never be as good as a wall. And when I read that, I was like, that is maybe the funniest thing I've ever read. He's like, I played a wall once. It was relentless. And I was like, and before I did comedy, Stephen Wright was kind of like Stephen Wright, Cosby. There was like a handful of guys, but like Stephen Wright, I love the one sentence wordplay, pun. And so like I get introduced to Mitch, and I was just like, this is my guy. Like, this is Stephen Wright of like my generation.
Right.
And so the guy that ran the comedy club in Go Bananas brought me, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking about bringing this dude to the comedy club. And he showed me Mitch's comic strip live set. And I was like, please, 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 please let me MC this week. I really want to MC this week. So he gave me the week, and Mitch was on the road by himself. His wife wasn't with him. And we just had a blast all week. And then the next week I was booked to MC in Dayton, which is only like 45 minutes from Cincinnati. And the headliner that week canceled. And they called Go Bananas and said, can you ask Mitch if he's booked next week? And if he's not, would he like to just come 45 minutes north and headline here? So that ended up being the case, and I got to work with him two weeks back to back.
Badass.
And we went to movies, we went bowling, like we just and I love Lynn, but when she wasn't with him, he hung out with me a lot more often, as one would.
Right.
They're obviously going to hang out with their wife if they're there. But for 2 straight weeks, like we did everything. And so that was in like April or May of 99. And I remember that because they brought him back to Go Bananas for New Year's Eve 2000. Okay. And I still had my day job. I was an IT guy, and it was that whole Y2K thing where they were worried that like computers around the world would shut down at midnight. So they let me leave to go host the shows, and then right at midnight, I had to go back to work till like 4 a.m. to just be on call or
bullshit,
whatever.
Yeah.
But that night, Mitch said, I'm doing this show in North Dakota. Do you want to come be on it? It's called Mitch Hedberg and Friends. And I was like, yes. And it was Valentine's Day of 2000. I took vacation from Procter & Gamble to fly to Minneapolis and hop in a van with Mitch and Lynn. He flew up a guy from Houston who played stand-up bass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he played bass on stage while Mitch in Strategic Grill Locations, Mitch's first album. there's a stand-up bass playing in the background while Mitch is doing his set. It's like wild. I mean, it's so cool. Like it's just.
I feel like that would go with his cadence.
Yeah,
very
and he like
each other very well.
the audience. It's like.
Right.
And then the audience laughs and he plays louder like ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And it's just like
So
Chuck did such a great job of like pacing it.
Are you comparing his comedy to like scat?
Like jazz? Yeah. It's the jokes between the jokes. Yeah, but I took vacation days to go work with him. And everybody's like, what, you're going, like, we take vacation days to go to Florida, and you're going to North Dakota in February. And I was like, I'll go wherever this dude asked me to go. And so that whole trip, he's like, call your boss and tell him you quit. I was like, Mitch, I can't quit my day job. Call him right now. I'm like, Mitch, it's 3 a.m. Like, I can't call my boss and quit my corporate day job. You need to quit that job. So I would use vacation days over the next year or so to work with him randomly. And then in 2001, they announced some cutbacks, and my job was safe, but they offered packages to anybody that wanted to leave before they made any layoffs. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, if I'm going to do it, this is the time to do it. I can get 6 months salary and benefits, and I can use that as my transition to try to hopefully get enough work to live off of middling. So I told my mom and dad, I called my sister, told her, and then I called Mitch. I was like, Mitch, I'm quitting my day job. And he was like, that's awesome, man. I'm so proud of you. He's like, what's your first full week as a professional comedian? I was like, it's going to be July 15th, because my last day was the 13th. Friday the 13th. I'll never forget the day, my last day of walking out of my day job, 2001. And he goes, what club have you always wanted to work? And at the time, the Houston Laugh Stop was the #1 club in the country. It's where like Dane Cook, Greg Giraldo, like all these guys recorded their albums at this club. And that's where Mitch had recorded his first album. I was like, the Laugh Stop is like, sounds pretty awesome. And he called me back a half hour later. He was like, your first full week as a comedian, you're going with me to the Houston Laugh Stop. And so he took me to the best club in the country my first week as a full-time comedian.
Nice.
And then that's how it started from there, of just working with him. And then the last time I saw him, it was he was on a tour for Comedy Central. It was him and Stephen Lynch. Okay. You guys remember Stephen Lynch? Guitar guy, played real like a funny, original, like dark humor songs. They were on tour together, and Al Madrigal was opening, who is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, he's been here a couple times.
Yeah. He was just the random opening act that nobody knew. And I was touring with Bill Engvall at the time, opening for him.
You were?
Yeah. And so on one of we had like 2 nights off, and I went and did a college show with Stephen Lynch in Michigan. And he's like, what do you got next? I was like, I'm off tomorrow, and then I got to be back in Illinois with Bill Engvall. He's like, Mitch, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm doing a show with Mitch tomorrow night in Kalamazoo. He's like, why don't you come hang out with us? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun, And so I went just to hang out, and Mitch had me do a guest set, which is like at a 2,500 seat theater.
Damn.
To just be like, why don't you go do 5 minutes? I was like, I couldn't even. Like, nobody else would do that.
No.
And so I did the set, and we hung out, and I said goodbye the next day, and that was the last time I saw him. And it was just completely random that I happened to see him that night. It was like 2 months later, he was gone.
Wow. On that crazy random guest set, 2,500 seat.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, like, I could, and like, there was like a slow deterioration, that you could kind of see, but it just was like, it was Mitch, and,
right.
And I remember it was like April. It was right before April Fool's Day. It was like March 30th, and so that's why a lot of people didn't believe it when the news came out. They thought it was a joke,
for sure.
But I was driving to a gig in Lexington, and my manager called me, and he said, "Have you heard anything about Mitch Hedberg?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he goes, "Well, people are saying that he died." And I was like, "Really?" I go, I mean, I've heard stuff, but I haven't heard that. And he says, well, the club that he's booked at this week is calling around looking for someone to come work there. And I was like, man, that doesn't sound good. I was like, I haven't heard anything. And I said, I'm going to call this woman, Kathy, at the Atlanta Punchline, who was real tight with him and I was really good friends with. I said, I'll see if she's heard anything. So I called, left her a voicemail, and I went on stage, and then I came off stage, and I picked up my phone, and I had 67 missed phone calls.
Damn.
And I just, as soon as I saw that, I knew. And so I got on the phone with Kathy for my drive home, and she told me what had happened, and I was just like, my God, man. I mean, it was just it was crazy. I hate to bring this thing down, but it's just – it makes you appreciate it makes you appreciate your friends.
Absolutely.
But it also makes you as a comic, it's just some of these people, you just don't know how long you have them for. And it's just I've just ever since then, I just became a sponge of any opportunity I had to work with somebody that I always wanted to work with. I took it because I didn't know if I'd get it again.
Right.
And you hate to think like that, but it makes you not want to just sit around and do nothing for sure.
So what did happen? What did he die from?
Just overdose.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought it was drugs and drug related, but I wasn't.
Yeah, and I still don't know if people would consider it preachy or whatever, but it's just it affected me like nobody, anybody I'd ever lost, I didn't have that kind of reaction to. And I was mad more than anything,
Right.
And I wrote this thing on my website, and I think it upset some people because I think they thought I was coming across as preachy, but I wasn't. It was more just look, whether you know it or not, there's a lot of people out there that care about you, and you need to know that, because if there's something that's going to take you away from them before you're ready or they're ready, then you got to get it fixed. And it was just a wake-up call for me, professionally and personally. Maybe it was the first time in my life that I really experienced a loss of someone I was super close to, not some uncle that I'd never met, or you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just I don't know. It affected me in a good way. As sad as I was, it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And like I said, I don't mean to get too serious.
No, not at all. No,
I was
this is
just,
good stuff.
we had a new door guy tonight, and he was I asked him who his favorite comic was, and he said Norm, and you know, he kind of got somber in the conversation after that.
Yeah.
And I told him the only thing that's kind of sucks about working here, and it doesn't really, is that you lose a lot of people that you see come through.
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, it's just a random thing. You don't know who it's going to be or when, but it's just in this industry, it's kind of a thing that happens, you know, and it does. It sucks. They're here one day, gone the next, and you never see it coming, you know?
Yeah. And you talk about Sam Kinison, you know, a guy who had all those demons for so long, and he got clean.
Yeah.
And then he died in a car wreck. Got hit by a drunk driver.
Right.
Yeah.
After he got sober, you know. Robert Schimmel, same thing. The guy beats cancer twice.
Yeah.
Still maybe the funniest thing I've ever heard on Conan O'Brien. He had a sitcom. He was set. His album was #1 on a major label, not a comedy label. It was on Warner Brothers Music. He's on The Daily Show. He's on Howard Stern. His Fox TV show gets picked up, and then he gets cancer, and it all goes away. And so the first time he was on TV after he got better, he went on Conan, and Conan's what's going on? And Schimmel goes, I did it, man. I licked the big C. And Conan was like, it's so great. And he goes, and I beat cancer. And Conan was like, I should have known. It was so funny. But he was another one. I had a chance to work with him. I took it instantly. You know, he came to Cincinnati, and it was really funny because I still had my day job at that time. And he was like, you want to go see a movie? And I was like, absolutely. So we go to the movies, and then it's over, and he's like, you want to sneak into another one? I was like, absolutely. So we watched 2 movies, and I'm just like, this is so cool. You know, it's I'm brand new in comedy, and it's just to be sitting next to him. I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
So he goes, I heard there's a Hustler store in downtown Cincinnati. And I was like, yeah, it's right downtown. He goes, can you drive me there? I was like, yeah. So he goes, I take him down to the Hustler store, and he buys this book, The Joys of Masturbation by Ron Jeremy. And I'm just like, this story is going to be so fun to tell people one day. And he gets in my car, and I'm driving him back to the hotel, and he's like, hey, I got to make a phone call. I was like, cool. And it's ringing. And he goes, Stern, Schimmel, I just want to let you know I bought you a book. I'm going to drop it off to you next week when I see you in the studio. Just calling to say hi. And I'm driving. I'm like, he's talking to Howard Stern. He's talking to Howard Stern in my car. And it was just like the coolest thing. And so he's asking me like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm an IT guy for Procter & Gamble. And he's like, no kidding. And so we exchanged AOL Instant Messenger names.
Oh, shit.
Remember AIM?
Oh, yeah.
And so randomly one night I get a message on AIM from him. And he's got a computer problem. And he's like, can you help me? And so I get on the phone. So now I'm doing tech support.
IT support for Robert Schimmel.
And then and then after that, he started taking me out to Middle for him. And again, it was just one of those things where it's just like, you just never know, and you go with it and you ride it for as long as you can. But he beats cancer twice, and then in a car accident, somebody hits him. And it's just like, you never know.
No.
It's crazy.
Well, and same with, Medicine Hat. He was trying to get clean. He was wearing a heart monitor. Like I remember he came here and he was wearing a heart monitor. He was wearing it for like a month. And Jen brought my daughter up for a little while, and he goes, I'm a monster, and she's like, I go, do you believe him? And she shook her head no. And he's like, yeah, look it. He goes, I got 6 boobies. And he opened up his shirt and showed all these fucking wired up compliments. So she kind of stopped and slowly backed away from him. But then, awesome. He was trying to, he had, off and on he would, cut back on drinking and, never quit, and, cut back on smoking. And then, he was trying to change things up, and then he has that fucking aneurysm in Walmart.
Man, it's Greg Giraldo is another one.
Yeah, that was another sudden one.
Changed my career. I mean, like without a doubt, one of the biggest things that ever happened to me. So I went to Montreal in 2004, and when you're a young comic, going to Montreal is it was the thing that could make you famous.
We just talked about this last week with John Paul Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
How big this Montreal festival is for
I saw John Paul in Montreal that year. So I'm at Montreal. I do okay, but I realized too late that I had a lot of jokes that referenced American stereotypes that you wouldn't think about wouldn't go over in Canada, but kind of did, like a Jehovah's Witness joke or something like that,
right.
And I corrected it all on my second show, but the first show was when all the industry was there, and I didn't bomb, but I just didn't do like I thought I was going to do or am capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And it just was I just had this vibe that I messed up, I blew my chance or whatever. And so not too long after that, I get invited to this Comedy Central comedy festival. It's in Miami, Florida, and it's the first one. There's not going to be any industry there. It's just going to be a fun festival. And I looked at it as a free trip to South Beach in February.
Hell yeah.
So I went into that with zero expectations, right? Because I already knew the people at Comedy Central who could help me. They liked me. That's why I was there. And so I'm on a show there that's an outdoor show that's free, which are two things that usually are a recipe for a terrible comedy show. Outside and no one's paying to be there. But they had a really nice setup. It was in this strip mall, and they basically filled in the open space between the two sides of the strip mall.
Okay. And
had a really nice sound system, and they fit 2,000 people in there.
Damn.
And they were great. And it was me, Jessica Curson, Brett Ernst, Sebastian Maniscalco. So he's on the free outdoor show, who's now the top selling comedian in the whole world.
Yeah.
Some really funny people. And I'm having a blast just being there hanging out. And so our free show is one thing, but then they have a theater. And like at one theater is the Chappelle cast. So it's like Donnell Rawlings, Bill Burr, and Charlie Murphy. And then Greg Giraldo's at that theater a different night. And then Dane Cook is at the arena. And Daniel Tosh is at the arena. Like, it was just a really cool event that had a couple different venues. And so I'm on the outdoor show, and I come off stage, and this girl's like, I need you to come with me right away. And I was like, is there something wrong? She's like, no, Greg Giraldo's playing down the street, and he didn't know he was supposed to bring an opener. And we showed him the list of people on this show, and he knows you, so he wants you to come just do 20 minutes in front of him. I was like, oh, awesome.
Had you worked with him before then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I knew him at that point. And so we walked down there. He's like, dude, thank you so much. I was like, dude, I mean, of course, like anytime. And so I go, I have a really good 20-minute set. And then later that night is the big Comedy Central party at this like hotel that they're having a red carpet, and they want me and Brett Ernst to host the red carpet and talk to people as they show up.
Nice.
So I have to leave. Like, I didn't even get to watch Greg's set. I get taken to this. We're walking to the hotel, and the girl who's escorting me, she gets a phone call. She's like, yeah, he's right here. He did? Oh, he did. Yeah, I'll tell him. And I'm like looking at her, what's going on? And she hangs up the phone, and she says, Doug Herzog would like to talk to you at the party tonight. Doug Herzog is the president of Comedy Central.
Oh.
And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, he was at the show tonight, and he was there to see Greg, and he wants to meet you. And I was like, oh, my God. So we go to this after party, and I'm standing there talking to Todd Glass, who was there opening for David Spade.
Nice dude.
And then he already knew Doug, and Doug comes walking up. He says, hello, Todd. And he introduces himself to me. And he was like, I just wanted to tell you that I really enjoyed your set. He was like, I actually called my wife after the show on my way here and told her your Victoria's Secret joke. He's like, I probably butchered it, but I thought it was really funny, and I just wanted to meet you. And I'm just like flipping out internally, you know.
Oh, for sure.
And he walks away, and Todd's like, boy, it doesn't suck if that guy likes you. And then 2 weeks later, I got a half-hour special on Comedy Central. But it all goes back to Greg giving me that chance.
Right.
And complete luck that he was in the audience that night.
And Greg needed an opener.
Yeah. And then that thing got me my Comedy Central record deal. And then that taking off is what kind of pushed me to headlining. And it was just like, I look back to that night, and it was Greg saying, hey, Josh will do it.
Let's pick Josh.
It's crazy. I mean, it's
little moments, you know, that end up blowing up into, you know.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Like, having a Comedy Central special, like, you dream of that.
Oh,
right.
You know? Like, even
right.
before I did comedy, I would watch those specials where you could pick your own background.
Yeah.
And you would be like, man, if I ever had one, what would my background be?
Right.
And so I was always like, I always have this, like, got detentions as a kid. I was in the detention club. It was like,
there was a club?
I was a founding member of it. We were so bad in government class in high school that the teacher started pre-filling out slips with our name on it, so that all she had to do was write the date to save time. And then it stayed so bad that she would hand us a detention slip as we walked into class. And if we were good, we could give it back to her at the end of class to save her from having to walk it over to our desk.
I feel like you guys were just keeping it real in government class. You were just trying to be like the government, right?
For sure. Well, I took it. So, like, Billy Madison was, it came out my senior year of high school. And as an 18-year-old, watching a guy light a bag of dog poop on fire so that someone has to stomp it out. Like, I've never seen anything funnier than that at that point in my life. And so we're all talking about it in class the next week.
Magazine Day.
Yeah.
Nudie Magazine
That whole movie.
Day.
Great movie.
But we tell Miss Jackson, we say, we're going to put that flaming bag of dog poop on your porch. And she's like, no, you won't. She's like, I've had students like you for years. I had my name taken out of the phone book a long time ago. Good luck finding my house. Well, my mom was president of the Board of Education. So she had a faculty and staff directory at our house. And Miss Jackson, her class before ours was in a different room. And a lot of times we would be sitting in our desks as she walked in. So the next day she walked in and her home address was written on the chalkboard. She eventually figured out it was me. But yes, I was a founding member of the Detention Club. And so I had always dreamed of, like, if I got a special, I wanted to look like I was in detention. And I pictured this, like, classroom with a chalkboard and a teacher sitting at the desk and it was empty, but I was at the board writing sentences.
Yep.
And so when I got my special, like, there were, parts of the process, and then they were like, all right, next part of the process, have you thought about what you want for your background? I was like, I know exactly what I want. And, like, that's, like, one of the, like, top 3 probably moments of 23 years of doing stand-up is walking in to the Hudson Theater in New York and seeing
and it being a reality.
Set. Yeah. There's your
that
set
I
that you were
envisioned.
thinking
That's
about
so
for
awesome.
years.
Yeah.
Like, see it built. It still gives me goosebumps to this day, but, like,
That's awesome.
there's nothing that can describe the feeling when you see that. And you're just like, good Lord, like, pinch me, or don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Comedy Central, I mean, that was the thing back then.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
that's when it
either
mattered.
That or, yeah, exactly. When it mattered to that or, like, HBO Showtime and stuff like that, but they didn't do those very often. So,
No.
yeah, I mean, that's how, because I remember, because we started here in 2004, and the big thing everybody was always proud of, Comedy Central. I've got Comedy Central.
Yeah.
And, like, if you don't have Comedy Central, then you're not doing it.
Right. Well, it was Premium Blend. Premium Blend is the first time you saw Mitch, Mark Maron, Dave Attell, Bill Burr, Greg Giraldo, Louis C.K., Pablo Francisco, Gabriel. I mean, that's everybody.
That's
if
right.
You got on Premium Blend, like, you're like, that was the credit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then after everybody had Premium Blend, then it became a half-hour special.
Yep.
But, like, I was on season 8, I think, and, like, by the time that I had done it, like, John Heffron was doing his second one, Mark Maron was doing his second one, Paul F. Tompkins was doing his second one, Maria Bamford was doing her second one. So there was a good handful of people that were on their second presents the year that I did mine. But then there was a lot of, like looking back, it was really cool. Some of the people that were doing their first one, like Chelsea Handler, it was the first time anybody had really seen her do stand up. And what was great was I was on the first night, so they did 4 a night, and they had 2 audiences. Every audience saw 2 specials, and they would rearrange the people in the front between the first and the second special. So John Heffron and I shared the same audience, and it was the first night of the week. But at the end of the week, Amazing Jonathan was filming an hour special. And he was, like, one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah.
And so I stayed the whole week just to be able to see the Amazing Jonathan, and then I watched everybody's specials throughout the week get taped.
Recording.
It was so cool.
That'd be badass.
Yeah, it was like Finesse Mitchell. I mean, who was already a friend of mine. Kyle Grooms, Ian Bagg was on that season. Bob Marley. It was just not names now that you're just like, oh, how cool was that? And it was just like all of them were filmed in 5 days.
So did you only do a half an hour set? I mean, did you only get to do 30 minutes, or did you do longer and they cut it up?
They tell you to do longer, but Todd Glass had told me do 30.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it up to them to edit it,
Right.
they don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Because he had shown me examples of people where, like, they cut out a bit in the beginning that the guy calls back to at the end, and it doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I
Like,
think
the
I
audience
remember-
is laughing, but everybody at home is like, what is that a joke about?
I remember seeing something like that where, like, I feel like I missed something. And
Yeah.
It's because of the magic of editing we did.
Yeah. So I was told it was actually like 23 minutes. He's like, don't do 30, do like 25.
Yeah.
And then he's like, then
They have to
they
use-
won't butcher it.
Yeah.
They'll have to use what they have. And it was really good advice.
I don't know who I heard recently that was given the advice to comics who do a special to be involved in the editing because of this same situation, that they'll cut things out where they don't understand,
right?
You know, the whole what's going on, and so they'll cut something out that you're like, no, that needs to be in the special. You know?
For sure. Or like, you know, like if you're doing a long set, there's certain jokes that you can't do as soon as you go on stage. Right. You have to build up like some credit with the audience before they let you get away with saying certain things. So if you take that out and try to put it at the beginning, if you're watching it at home, even if people in the show are laughing, you're like, that's a
right.
He goes right in.
You're still an
built
audience
up to
at
that,
home.
really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're still that audience member at home that is still experiencing it the same way you would if you were there.
Right.
So that's why it has to be done in the order that you wanted to be done.
That's right.
Well, you mentioned Louis C.K. earlier, and I feel when he was here, how it's a whole story that weaves its, you know, like, and everything goes together, but you have to see all of it. You can't just see pieces of it, and it won't make sense.
Right.
And you'll be like, oh, this guy's a fucking asshole. You know?
Well, you might feel like that anyway,
Right.
you know, depending on where you get your news.
Right.
But,
And some of it is true. I mean,
for sure. I mean, like I said, Bill Cosby was like the first stand-up I ever saw. He ultimately probably influenced me more than anyone, just in terms of like, I'd never seen this before, that someone could be on stage by themselves telling stories, you know? And so, like, it's weird to tell people that, like, a serial rapist made you do what you want to, you know what I mean? Like, influence you to do what you do for a living. But you can't go back in time and change that. You know, it doesn't take away from the fact that he was an amazing comedian.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's also a creep.
Yeah.
You know, or worse.
So did you build your delivery and the way that you deliver your material? Is that a lot of Cosby and Mitch, because you kind of have that slow paced delivery, and you know, and always have. It's not like, you know, you just decided to start doing that one day.
Yeah, I don't know that it's on purpose, but I think, like, just as someone who's like critiqued my act more than anybody else over the years, like, I think if you know the people that I'm talking about when I tell you who my influences were, you can see the storytelling of Stephen Wright and Ron White. You can hear the wordplay of Stephen Wright and Hedberg, and you know, you can hear the observations of Jake Johansson and Jerry Seinfeld. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're all in there somewhere. But, you know, like you were talking about, like Louis', you know, seamlessness. And like, that's something that I've always tried to do. And I feel like I've gotten better at it over the years it's been in the last few years, but it's pretty regular now that people will come up to me after a show and say, man, it's like you were just up there talking. It's like you were just a dude at my house on the couch, like just talking. Yeah. You know? And that's what I want. I don't want it to be like, okay, that's the end of this joke and the beginning of the next joke. Like, I always have tried to spend as much on segues and having bits go in the right order, where it just one kind of leads into the next. At the end, it feels like a 45-minute story versus like 45 minutes worth of 3 to 4 minute bits.
Right.
You know, and that's like purposeful for me, because I like that aspect of just like, this is just like one long story.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, that's why I'm such a fan.
Oh man, you're too sweet.
I think we all are huge fans of you, Josh.
That's
I was telling Vinny earlier, I feel I've worked here for a while, and I've worked plenty of your shows, and I feel like I don't even really know you. Like, when you came in tonight to do this, I was like, you know, I love Josh and I love his comedy, but I don't feel like I've really had a conversation with him ever. Yeah. And so I was pumped to do this show tonight because of this.
Well, I mean, I've certainly had many hangouts with the staff here over the years. Yes. Brian and I were talking today about some of the old ones of going to, like, somehow we all ended up at the casino together, and I'm teaching 8 of the servers how to play craps, you know, and one girl I was telling Bidnick, I was like, I'll never forget this. One girl went to throw the dice at the end of the craps table, and they never landed. They sailed over the other end of the craps table, and I was like, I've been playing this game for a decade, and I've never seen that happen one time.
I've never seen that ever.
Yeah, I don't think that happens.
But that's like, this is a rare place, and I'm not just saying it because you guys are here, but like, I refer to Colleen as my comedy mom. And I know a lot of comics do that, but she has. I mean, there's no other way to describe her to anyone as other than my comedy mom. And so it's like, for as many times as she's had me here, like the staff has probably, I mean, you guys might feel differently because you work here, but probably the least amount of turnover, like when you compare to other clubs
true.
where every
true.
time you're there, it's a completely different staff. And I think that speaks to the people who are in charge here of creating a good work environment and hiring quality people. But that's the kind of rooms that you look forward to coming back to, because you like to see the same people. I mean, you're not going to know anybody from the audience unless you know somebody in that town. So like the staff is like your family in that city. So when it's the same people every time you come back, like, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of comics that do talk about that with the lack of turnover here, or sometimes they'll come and they'll be like, oh, who's still here? Like when they've come through like the first couple of times, like, oh, who's still here? And they're like, oh shit, everybody's still here.
Yeah. And it's a top-down thing, I think, within this company, because Columbus is the same way. Des Moines is the same way. They're clubs that are run well, and people want to work there, and they want to stay there when they get the job. And it means a lot to the comics, because that's how well-run rooms are created, because people are here long enough to figure it out. And so when you don't have to worry about people heckling, or the room being seated properly, or people complaining too much about their service or whatever, it's like, it makes for a better show for me. And you after you do it long enough, you don't even think about it, but you just know the rooms that are run better than others because of those things, and you want to work there more often.
Which all seem like little tiny things, but in the end, it all makes all of this work.
100%.
Yep.
A million %.
And this is the narrative we hear pretty much from everyone we've had on here, is that, this is one of the best places to come.
And it's funny because, I mean, you guys live here, but I don't know if all you guys are from here, but when you tell people, like, you're just having a casual conversation with somebody on an airplane or something, they find out you're a comedian. What are your favorite places to play? And when you say Omaha and Des Moines and Columbus, Ohio, they're like, what?
Yeah, for sure.
And you're like,
they're like, not New York and LA and Texas.
And it matters more now than when I was starting out, like when you're 24 and single and not a care in the world, and every hotel is nicer than your apartment, and you're in cities you've never been to, like, you'll go anywhere. You'll take any gig, Right. And now it's like, I'm lucky enough to have other things, other sources of income, to where I don't have to do comedy. I do it because I want to, and I'm not burnt out on it. So if I'm going to leave my house and my family and my children, I'm going to do it for places that I want to be at, So if you see me working a few clubs a year, they're places that I really want to go to. It's not because I have to be there.
Yep, I was going to say, you don't have to come here for sure, but you do. And
I'll come every time they'll have me.
Well, and I heard you say it on Todd and Tyler this morning. I think it's Tyler right at the end of the show. He said that, this is your last gig for the year.
Yep.
And then you're going to start booking.
Oh, no
so
shit.
you're not working and all.
I have
November,
a corporate gig that got booked yesterday.
Uh-huh.
In Vegas, actually. I'm excited about it. But
nice.
It's in December, but it's not a show people can come to.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, I stopped doing New Year's Eves.
Nice.
And it was just weird, for the first time in 20 years to be home at midnight on New Year's Eve, because I'd spent so many years of just like, I did New Year's Eve here.
Yeah,
not that long
ago.
ago. And like, this place was fun because I have friends here, you know. But if I'm in a city where I don't know anybody, and it's like, 3, 2, 1, midnight, Happy New Year, everybody, and then everybody's going out, and and I just go back to my room. Like, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me, but it's just like, it's like if I don't have to do it, I can be home and like watch my kids like lose their minds at midnight. it's I like it. I like having that option. And like I said, it keeps comedy fun, which for me, 23 years in, that's the most important thing. Like, I don't want to, that was why I started a t-shirt company in 2006, is because I'd met so many headliners when I first started that just, they hated being on the road. They lived out of a suitcase. They had to take whatever work came from them because this is the only thing they knew. They didn't have relationships with their children, or, they were like, I don't know. There's just nothing in their life was healthy because all they knew was stand up. And I just never wanted to resent stand up for that,
Right.
And so that's why I started the t-shirt company, because I didn't need it to be successful then, but I knew one day I'd probably be married and have kids. And if I didn't want to work for X amount of time and I didn't have to, then I wouldn't get to the point where I felt like I was choosing one over the other, that I would grow to hate doing stand-up. And I'm very blessed that I still love it this far into the game.
So earlier I was asked by Chef Brian to ask if you could get the Japanese baseball team license so that we could print T-shirts for those teams.
We tried. We actually tried to get the Korean baseball league to license us, but it was like some crazy amount of money.
Really?
And a really weird process. And it was because for a while, they were the only, like, MLB wasn't playing, but Korean baseball was. Do you remember that?
We
and
talked
they had
about
like the
that
stuffed
earlier,
animals
yeah.
in the stands and everything. Yeah.
Early
so-
pandemic, that was the first sports. We talked about that earlier tonight. I was talking with Brian. That was the first sports that came back, and I would be up at 3 a.m. watching that shit. Being like,
It's so great.
It was great.
It's so fun with like the bullpen cart and everything. Like, it's just
They had cheerleaders there. There's
Yeah.
no one in the stands, and they're cheering when I think I turned it on. I can't remember what white dude from America. He hit back-to-back. He hit a home run the inning before, and then they batted around. He hit a home run the next inning. I was like, oh, this is great.
That's so cool.
awesome.
We're big fans. But we did get MLB Players Association license.
That's awesome.
Last year, which was a shortened season, but this was the first year we really got to use it. And it was really fun because I'm such a baseball guy. It's the one sport where it doesn't have. I'm a diehard Reds fan, obviously.
Yeah,
but
I see you posting Red stuff all the time.
I worked for Bally Sports, the Reds broadcast group.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
That's awesome.
They hired me for August and September. So basically the last 2 months of the season, they created a trivia app, Bally's Trivia.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go live at first pitch, and then we would not be off of the camera until the last out.
Oh, really?
And so every half inning, and in between the half innings, we would do 3 trivia questions, 30 questions throughout the night, 3 rounds of 10. There would be a prize for the winner of rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then a really nice prize for whoever had the most points that night. And it was like autographed jerseys, and like it was really cool stuff.
Wow.
But it was a really nice production. But we were doing it five games a week.
Wow.
So, I was on camera for 3.5 hours, and we had to be set up in front of our computer for an hour and a half before the first pitch just to make sure everything was working. So 25 hours a week doing Reds games all of September and August. Hopefully they're going to do it next year. I can't do that many games next year. I'll lose my mind. But it was really fun to be like, and when we weren't doing the questions, we were like talking to live chat and, telling stories. And, Danny Graves was one of my co-hosts who's an all-time saves leader for the Reds. So he had really good baseball insight, and everyone was encouraged to watch the game on TV and then play the app while they were watching it.
Right.
So
Which
we
is
could
a
talk
cool
about
ass
second
thing,
screen.
'cause baseball, like people that don't watch baseball or not into it, like, myself or you or Sean's not into it. This is a cool thing, I feel like, for them because it's entertainment along with watching the game.
We had people on there that were
awesome.
not even
That's
they
awesome.
didn't even care about the game.
Yeah.
And some did. So we would just reference something that would happen in the game, take a couple questions from the chat, ask a couple trivia questions. And of course, like we would go off on tangents like we have tonight, just like, oh, and Danny would be like, I played with that guy, and I love doing it, but it was a lot
of time.
Yeah.
A bit way more commitment than you were planning to give.
Well, a little bit, but also it's like, dude, I'm working for the Reds. It's
Hell
like
yeah.
kind of surreal. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a diehard Braves fan, but
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Only in the last couple of weeks.
No, my whole life. But I'm also
Bandwagon.
Indians and Reds fan because my mom has a place in Goodyear, Arizona, and she has season tickets to spring training.
Oh, yeah.
So every year I have 3 sons. I've taken my sons for years to Reds, Indians. And it's always funny to me because I can always tell which team thinks they have a chance at winning a pennant, because when we go there on St. Patrick's Day, one team will buy the green shit and the other team will not, because the Reds and Indians will always play on St. Patrick's Day. And there's been a few years where either the Indians or the Reds, they won't come out in the green stuff that you wear, and it's like, oh, they've given up already.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. It's sadly true. Yeah. This was an odd year that I didn't have a dog in the fight, but I was happy with either team that won, mostly because I really wanted to see Dusty Baker get a ring.
I do like him.
But I'm just I really like the Braves. I like a lot of the guys on the Braves. I was heartbroken for Acuna Jr. We saw every game that they played in Cincinnati this year, and I told my son, I was like, watch this guy, because this is like the guy, you know. And Freddie Freeman is just like the best human. And
that's the craziest thing is they just won it. I went with me and my wife went to Atlanta in like July, and I fucking made a joke there like, oh, it'd be great if they went to the World Series the year we saw them. They were under 500 when we saw them.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no fucking chance they're going to make it.
Did you see the stat that came out today? I want to find it. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're
fine. I want to
fine.
get this right, though.
Is it like the Hank Aaron one?
Yeah.
Yes. It's super crazy because Hank Aaron passed away.
Hank Aaron passed away this year, arguably the greatest Brave of all time, and some would still consider the all-time home run leader if they don't count Barry Bonds, but those people are stupid.
And I think I have it in my head. They won 44 games before the break. They won 44 before the All-Star break, which was Hank Aaron's number. They won 44 games after the break, so their record was 88, which they were the team in the playoffs with the least amount of wins. And then they won the World Series on the 44th week of this year.
Yep.
Which is insane. And the whole time, my whole family's I grew up in Alabama. My whole family's Braves. I was telling my mom, I think after we beat the Brewers, I was like, there's something going on here, and it's more than just this baseball team, because there's no reason that we should be in this position right now. And it's this fucking guy with the Angels in the outfield. That's what it was, man. It was a crazy run for them.
It's like only in baseball.
Exactly. And that's what makes baseball so beautiful,
the best.
you know?
Like we were talking about, I think it was like a month ago, the Jose Fernandez night in Miami. Do you remember the first game after? So like Jose Fernandez was a pitcher for the Marlins, young guy, absolute stud, just like can't miss watching him pitch. Like he was just next level guy.
Yes.
It's super fun, like spirited player. And he dies in a boat crash in Miami. And so they cancel the game like the next night or two.
Yep.
And then the following night they're going to play, and it's like a tribute night to him. And D. Gordon, who is like his best friend, is up to bat first.
Who weighs like maybe like 130 pounds. Like he never hits home runs.
Never hit a home run. Like first pitch? It was early in the at-bat.
Yeah, it was very early in the at-bat.
It's a home run. And is bawling his eyes out, rounding the bases. And it was like that stuff only happens in baseball.
Yes.
Michael Lorenzen, pitcher for the Reds. He's a relief pitcher. Relief pitchers never bat because they're only in to face a couple batters, and then the pinch hitter takes that spot, and a different relief pitcher comes in the next inning. Michael Lorenzen, relief pitcher for the Reds, his dad passes away. He takes like 2 games off, says, my dad would want me to pitch. Comes back in the circumstance in the game, they were out of pitchers or something. He had to bat, hits a home run in his at bat as a Red.
That's insane.
Bawling his eyes out, rounding the bases. Like that stuff only happens in baseball. And it like the Tyler's with the pitcher for the Angels that
yeah.
was it Skaggs?
Yeah, Skaggs.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Like something crazy
got
happened.
hit by
like
a drunk driver or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was drunk.
Something
I'm
like
sorry
that.
if I'm talking
Yeah.
bad about him or
No,
whatever.
no.
You know,
It's something like, it was one of those two things.
Yes. Yes.
And on his tribute night, it was some weird numbers thing.
Absolutely.
But that stuff only happens in baseball. But you're right. That's why baseball is the best.
It's so awesome.
Like as a baseball fan, what's like your favorite, or like what memory sticks out to you the most, like as a kid or like just as a baseball fan, like that you experienced?
I would say 1990 Reds winning the World Series is like, as a kid, you know, it was like so cool because it never happens ever for Cincinnati. It happened with the Big Red Machine, but I wasn't born yet. But I have like dumb memories. That was what I loved about baseball, was like the love for baseball came from going to the game with my dad. So like I couldn't tell you any game I went to as a kid if the Reds won or lost. I could tell you all the players that were on the team back then because I collected their baseball cards. But it was just like special, you know what I mean, to go to a game. And so my love for baseball evolved from that. And I think that's why I like watching other teams besides the Reds play. I just love the game so much. But yeah, man. And then I've been lucky enough as an adult to see some really cool things. Like I was at the 2010 game when Jay Bruce hit a walk-off home run to clinch the division for the first time in 20 years. My phone didn't even have a camera. Like that's the kind of phone I had. So I had like a little Sony cam, and it was the top of the ninth. It was tie ball game, and I was dating my wife at the time, and I said, I was like, I'm just gonna start recording just in case something cool happens. So I just start recording the game. Second pitch, driven over the center field wall. Stadium loses their mind. I mean, it's the first time we've made the playoffs in 20 years, and I got the whole thing recorded from my camera. I was at the 2015 Home Run Derby in Cincinnati when Todd Frazier for the Reds won the Home Run Derby in front of the hometown crowd. I mean, it's just like surreal to see it in person. So I have as many memories as an adult as I do when I was a kid, of like specific moments of like I got to see it live.
Have you had any conversations with first baseman Joey Votto? Because I know he loves to talk to the crowd the entire time. That's why he's the best.
He's the best. If you
during spring training, it's the best because he'll just literally have a conversation with someone in the front row, second row during the game.
Yeah, he's so smart and very witty, dry sense of humor. If you get a chance, have you seen that Letterman talk show on Netflix? The next needs no introduction or coming to the stage or something like that. So he's done 2 or 3 seasons of it, and it's like, I mean, he's had Barack Obama and Jay-Z and like crazy names on there. And at the end of season 2, there's a special episode, and it's Seinfeld and Letterman interviewing each other. And they have a whole conversation about Joey Votto.
Oh, really?
That is unbelievable about their interactions with him while they were at games. And you got to go listen to it. I will never do it justice how good it is. But I met Joey when he was just he's kind of socially awkward, and I only say that because I think he's just shy. He's a bit introverted if he doesn't know you. And so they have this thing called Reds Fest every year that's in December. That's like, you know, Comic-Con for Reds fans. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. They bring back old players, they have the current players, they have minor leaguers, and it's just everything Reds for like 3 days, and it's awesome. And so for a while I was like hosting panels and stuff, and I got to just be backstage, you know, randomly. And I ended up in the green room with him when he was still pretty young, but already the guy. And we were just talking, and he was just like real, like very, how you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. Like that kind of thing to everybody.
Oh, really?
And so somehow we brought up Montreal. We talked about Montreal earlier. And in Canada, Montreal is a huge deal. It's called the Just for Laughs Festival. But up in Canada, there's a Just for Laughs channel, and they have programming from the festival on that channel year round. So it's not just like a couple of days to them. It's like a big, huge deal.
Huh.
So when he found out that I had done Just for Laughs, he kind of like opened up a little bit about how much he liked stand up, and we just had like this real cool conversation about it. But he's the guy. He's the Acuna Jr. that I tell my kid, whatever he does, do that.
Right.
Everything he does, do that. The way he talks to the media, the way he is fun, but not silly all the time.
Right.
Like, he's just the perfect balance of, like, this is the dude you want to be right here. He's a student of the game. I mean, he had this crazy season this year, and he's
right.
37 years old.
That's right. Yeah, I always it's always very entertaining when we go to spring training. I picked him out right away from, just knowing his name from being a good player, but like tell the same thing you tell your kids, tell my kid, watch this guy.
Yeah.
Like, watch what he does, and like, this is the guy. I have one son that always loved baseball and was a baseball player, and so Joey Votto's one of the guys I'd be like, this is the guy. Like, you got to model yourself off this guy, because he's just such an entertaining guy.
Yeah, and my dad did that for me. To like go back to your question, so there were guys that my dad would say, I want you to one day be able to say, I saw this dude. So he would take me, like when Nolan Ryan was pitching for the Astros and they'd come play the Reds, and he'd be like, I want you to be able to say you saw Nolan Ryan pitch. And as a kid, you're like, oh, this is cool. But now it's like, Pete Rose, Yeah. So I remember I was in the bathtub, and my dad comes in the bathroom, yanks me out of the bathtub, puts a towel around me, gives me this little robe, and he sits me down in front of the TV because Pete was coming up to bat, and he wanted me to be able to say that I saw him break Ty Cobb's record. And I remember sitting there. I was 8 years old.
That's fucking awesome.
And I was dripping wet in a bathrobe on the floor of our living room, and I saw Pete Rose break the all-time record. And my dad, he had the foresight of like, I want you to be able to say you saw it happen.
That's crazy.
That's so awesome.
And now I think back to, like, when I was a kid, because I lived like 15 minutes away from Anaheim, and my biggest memory was my brother took me to a game. They were playing the Mariners, and we were like second row in the outfield, and Griffey was right in front of there. And now that you're saying that, I'm like, I think he, like, because we would get like shitty seats, but like he bought those specifically against the Mariners. Griffey's like right there. And now I'm like, oh shit, like, that's why he probably did it on purpose, like just so I can have that story of I saw Griffey.
I saw
like
him
in his prime.
I saw him play in high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He everybody was talking about him locally. I was younger, but he played for the school called Moeller, which is in this like the Greater Catholic League, which is the big Catholic high schools in Cincinnati that just like every star athlete from those schools goes to Notre Dame, and like, I mean, it's crazy. They're just institutions for professional athletes. And there was one of those schools in my town where I grew up, and for whatever reason, the day that they played Moeller, they used my high school's field for the game. And so everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Ken Griffey's son plays for Moeller, and he's like really good." So he hit a home run. I think they used our field because their field, they didn't have a fence. It was just like it could go for days, but we had
really
like ours was like 313 down the line or whatever.
Right.
And he's the only high school kid I ever saw hit it over the fence. It's
crazy.
He's probably my favorite of all time.
He was
favorite player of all time. And Joey Votto is like 1.1. Yeah.
I mean, Griffey, how stoked were you when he came back to Cincinnati?
It was the greatest day ever. I mean, he took a pay cut to come play for the Reds, and he never was his old self, but he still hit 500 and 600 in a Reds uniform. I mean, people talk like he didn't do anything for the Reds, but he had over 100 home runs in a Reds uniform. They built Great American Ballpark for him with the short porch in right field. And, I mean, just to be able to see him whenever you wanted was, like, just surreal, I mean, it's just, he's, like, incredible. That swing
crazy.
Is, like, the most beautiful thing that ever.
It's beautiful. I have one Pete Rose story. It's a hearsay story. My buddy from high school, his wife was on a girls' trip in Chicago, and there must have been like a card show or something, and Pete Rose was there. and they walk by, and he's such an awesome dude. My buddy's wife walked up to him and was like, hey, my husband loves you, whatever. And she called her husband and had my buddy talk to Pete Rose on the phone. The best part of the story, though, is before they had the call, and, you know, we're probably in our mid-20s at this time, and so, you know, some cute girls coming up to him, and he's like, you girls want to see a picture of me as a baby? And they were like, yeah. And he whips out a picture of a baby with, like, a grown man's cock on it. They're like, what? It's me as a baby. And she's like, will you call my husband? He's like, sure.
That's so funny. You know, I mean, it's comical that this joke would come out of Pete's mouth, but, you know, because he's such he signs every day at Caesar's Palace. I mean, he's done every card show ever, you know, obviously because he's got to pay for things. And he's got to pay for those vices.
A few bills.
Let him in.
But him and Bob Feller, the pitcher for the Indians,
Right.
who passed away last year, I think.
Yes.
Bob Feller was like his biggest enemy at the Hall of Fame for the players in the Hall of Fame. Like, he was the guy that would, like, you know, basically champion to keep Pete out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the gambling.
Wow.
And so him and Bob Feller hated each other.
No shit.
And so Bob Feller was notorious for showing up at car shows uninvited, putting up his own table and just yelling out, I'm Bob Feller. I have 500 wins and 3,000 strikeouts.
Wait.
And I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'll be signing autographs over here.
So Bob Feller just shows up at places.
Oh, yeah,
like,
would
I'm
just
Bob
crash
Feller.
baseball card shows.
The show.
And Pete Rose, they were going back and forth once, and Pete Rose said, somebody asked him about like memorabilia or whatever, and Pete Rose says, the rarest piece of baseball memorabilia is a baseball not signed by Bob Feller.
That's good.
It's hilarious.
That's awesome. How did you get hooked up with how in the hell did you get hooked up with the Reds, and, you know, like, you're doing the app, and I've seen you post stuff. Was your t-shirt company that got you into this, or how did you?
It was a while ago, probably like 11, 12 years ago. Bronson Arroyo, pitcher for the Reds, musician, and now he has a full band, but really good musician, played guitar. He was on his off nights, he would do like random shows in Cincinnati, and it became a big thing to go, you know, Bronson's playing somewhere, let's go watch him. And so when he started doing these shows, his pitching kind of took a dive. And he would get a little bit criticized by Marty Brenneman, the Reds announcer, that like, oh, it's, you know, he's staying out late, like playing these gigs, and now he's not pitching that great.
Yeah.
So the Reds Community Fund, their charity, had set up a event at a theater that Bronson was going to play music, and they were going to do the ticket money would go to the community fund, and someone had referred me to open the show, and so I was set to open the show, and then he started pitching real bad and was getting really criticized. So they thought maybe we shouldn't hold like a full-blown concert and fuel these, you know, these statements about his music getting in the way of his pitching. So they canceled the show and felt really bad for me. So that was the first year they asked me if I wanted to do something at Reds Fest. And so that kind of got my foot in the door. And then I wrote this. It was right when when Dusty Baker was managing the Reds. And so I wrote this parody song of Dust in the Wind called Dusty Please Win. And I had a buddy of mine who knew how to play guitar come and play guitar, and then I sang the song at Reds Fest, and they were like, oh, you got to record this. You got to record this. So that's how it's on YouTube. That's how I got Nick Lachey to sing a duet with me for Dusty Please Win. So the video's on YouTube, and before we shot the video, I would tell people like, all right, listen to this and see if you can guess which one's me and which one's Nick.
Are you like neck and neck? Is it hard to tell?
He just
which
comes
one
in
is
and
which?
it's like perfect pitch and hitting every note. I'm like, we get it, dude. We get it. But just over the years, and then I ended up becoming a board member for the Reds Community Fund, and Marty Brenneman does a golf outing every year that's like the best golf outing in the city. It's like a 2-day event. People stay overnight at a casino, and they put on this huge show. And at one point, they initially had me doing like opening for whatever musical guests that they brought in.
Mm-hmm.
And people were leaving after the comedy, and they were like, let's just do comedy. So like 9 years ago, they switched to it's a comedy show after the banquet dinner on the night of the golf outing.
Nice.
And so I booked the comedians, and I've had Greg Warren do it, Pat McGann, Nate Bargatze, Kostaki, just some just really solid.
Oh,
Ralph
yeah.
Harris has done it. And so that's become like a big thing every year, is like who the headliner is going to be for the comedy show at the golf outing, and just stuff like that. Over the years, I've just gotten to know more and more people, and I've become a bit more of a regular face around the stadium, and knowing people in the front office and the broadcast team and former players and current players. And, it's just like, there's always just something for me to do. And like, it's never not cool for me. Like, I know, I know you're supposed to act like you've been there, but it's every time I get to do something, like, it's like, I mean, it's my team. You know? It's
fucking
for
awesome.
sure.
Yeah.
Because I see you post shit on Facebook all the time, and you're always, ecstatic looking in those pictures, and you're always, there's always something, and I was just like, man, how's he getting to do all this really cool shit?
Yeah, it's just a foot in the door a long time ago, and over time they've just trusted me to like not embarrass them, not bag on the team, and even in their worst years, or bag on the people in charge or players. Because I'm a fan, I can talk funny without being degrading to anybody.
Right.
And I think they trust me, because I don't think that's something that you can, especially with the way social media is now, like the wrong person saying the wrong thing at a official Reds event goes viral on Twitter. Like, there's a lot more than just like, you're not working for us again. Like, there's real repercussions to that. I mean, we've seen it with their broadcasters.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a little recent event, wasn't there?
Yeah. So for that reason, I think they just trust me. And when it came time for Bally Sports to do this thing, I found that's what I asked them. I was like, how did you get me? And they said, people at the Reds said that you're the first person we should call for this, which meant a lot to me. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we're getting kind of long here.
Where are we
I just
at?
wanted to ask.
An hour 37.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask real quick before we get out. Skyline Chili.
Yeah.
Pretty shitty, dude. I don't like the cinnamon. No, I'm from the South. I like spicy chili. I don't like the cinnamon.
You can't compare it to that chili. You can't. It's more
right.
of a soup.
It's a
Greek.
Yes.
It's
My stepdad, big into Skyline Chili, and I'm not gonna lie. Every time I go there, and he listens to this, I get pissed when I go there.
How did you have it when you had it?
I've had it
on the noodles, the 3-way.
I've had it on the noodles.
So for people who are listening who don't know,
yeah, I like
it's
fill some of us in.
It's like a soupy. It's called chili, but it's more like a Greek soup, and it's a meat soup that it's made with cinnamon and chocolate, and
it's very sweet.
Yeah, it's a sweet.
Yeah, this is Sean.
Yeah. And buy it in a store, or is it a restaurant?
It's a
everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different
spring training. You can get them, on chili dogs. So I've had it on a chili dog, which I don't like
That's
at all.
That's my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, no. You're allowed now.
It's good.
I know a lot.
It's
it's
the
for a lot of
conversation I want to have.
Yeah.
My stepdad also makes it at home. He's a big Skyline Chili guy,
Yeah.
and he does the noodles and stuff. And I'm not. And this just goes back to I'm not very flexible, and I grew up, like I said, in Alabama, and my chili's always been spicy. So when I went there and had Skyline Chili for the first time, I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
You can't really think of it as a comparison to chili.
And this is a good thing is I've never been told it's not a chili. It's more of a meat soup.
Yeah, it is because it's very liquidy, right?
It is.
So it's served two ways in Cincinnati typically. So there is what's called a three-way, which is spaghetti noodles, chili, and shredded cheddar cheese on top.
Yep.
And that's called a three-way. If you add beans or onions, it's a four-way, and if you add both, it's a five-way. Okay. And then the other way, it's served on hot dog, chili. You can get onions or mustard, cheese on the top, cheese coney. But yeah, people, it's a love-hate thing. It's part of the culture there. I get it. Like I go to Pittsburgh. I'm not a fan of the French fries on sandwiches. I go to Canada. I look like the poster child for someone who would like gravy and cheese on French fries. Not a fan.
You look like you might be an advertisement, but not so much.
Right. So I don't ever, it's one of those things that if people like it, they love it. And if they don't like it, they hate it.
It's fair enough.
But if you want to try it, you can find it at a lot of, if you live somewhere that has a Kroger.
Yeah.
They typically have it in Kroger in cans.
Okay.
But just give it a try. Put it on a hot dog and some shredded cheddar cheese on top and see what you think of it.
Skyline Chili.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to check this out.
Hey, by the way, Davis, you are very flexible.
Says you.
Man, dude, this has been so much fun. It's for real. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Anytime. Absolutely. I've told every story I've ever had now, so. No, it's fun. Like I said, it's always fun to see the same faces when you come back, and Vinny, like we've been buddies for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's being complimented by the people that work at a comedy club is the best compliment that a comedian can get. I've said it forever, and I mean it. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, you're one of the best, man, and we're happy that you came and sat down with us. And
my pleasure.
Good show tonight, and this was fun.
Yeah, it was a great show. I've like I said earlier, I was looking forward to this, and I was not disappointed.
Good.
Heard lots of.
That'd be really weird.
I know.
Talk me up like that, and then after this, you're like, after I spent some time with him, not a fan.
He's great. He's great in little doses. He's great on stage, but an hour and a half is a bit much.
I look for the episode to come out. It's just like the intro and the goodbye. It's like 4 minutes long. I was like, dude, we recorded for like 2 hours. Oh man, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh, again.
Well, thanks everybody for listening.
Subscribe, YouTube, all the other social medias.
Email.
Like, subscribe, email.
doorguyspod@yahoo.com. We still got that Yahoo address.
Yes, we have a few emails. We'll get to those when we have.
Oh, we got some new ones.
We have a couple of them. We'll get to them when we get just Door Guys.
Fuck yeah! All right, Sean, you got a song for us?
This is Sean's song.
All right,
he's gonna play us out. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thank you.
This song is called Poo Poo Wee Wee Bumba. Right.